Hello everybody, this is Mr. Mruberduck and welcome back to another redstone video. Today I have something really cool for you, so let's just flick this lever. As you can see, a 2-high wall pops down and we can carry on through right up our stairway to, well, not much really. You may think, hang on a minute, that title's slightly misleading. How is this in any way a hidden storage? Well, I'll show you, just give me 1 second. Now if you flick the lever, out of nowhere, a chest, an anvil and furnace station pops out of nowhere. We can access this all with no problems whatsoever. So this thing is pretty cool, as you can see, but I don't think the coolest thing is what you can do with it. I think it is in fact the redstone that makes it all work. So let's take a look at it, shall we? So here it is, the redstone. You can see it functions just fine and it looks pretty damn good. Now this thing, I struggled to come up with a name for this thing, but yeah, I'm going to call it the smallest, to my knowledge, 2-high expandable hidden storage, I think. Yeah, that's what I'll name the video. But yeah, it is expandable, you may have gathered from that title. Unfortunately, it does not work in bucket because it uses this budded torch tower, but that does allow for an incredibly compact build. Speaking of which, let's get into the size of this thing. So this thing weighs in at 4 blocks wide by 4 blocks tall by 4 blocks deep, which comes in at 64 blocks in volume, which is very small for what you could consider a 2-high hipster door. However, it's not completely flat with the floor because of this input here for the back pistons, but that is really the only downside in an otherwise awesome build, if I do say so myself. So now it's stripped down to the complete bare minimum and you can see just how small this thing is. If we give this lever a flick, it still works and it's brilliant. And yeah, I'm going to do a tutorial for this thing in this video, so sit tight for that. But now I'm just going to try and give a whirl at explaining it. So yeah. Just briefly before I get into that, I'd like to issue a challenge to the general community. If you can make a 2-high hidden expandable storage thing smaller than this, go ahead and try. I will be very surprised because I spent a long time fine-tuning this and making sure it was the smallest I could possibly make it. But yeah, enough of that. So basically, the way this torch tower works is that it relies off budding. So let me just give you a quick demo. If I place 2 pistons down like this, get a torch on a block and do that, I can get a whole double extender with just 1 input. As you can see, unfortunately this lever is turned on, but this bottom piston doesn't realise it, so it's only until you update the block that it pushes. And what this allows for is a very, very simple first extension to get the first block into where it needs to be. And to get the other one, flick the lever again, and the right one's fire. It requires a bit of nifty timing to get this piston here to fire just right, but if you get it right, it does work absolutely fine with just 1 pulse, and that is brilliant. So the way I fit this into design was using this lever to turn on this dust, which updates this piston here, pushing it out, then along comes this, then this comparator turns off, this line turns off, and we get this torch turning on, which does what I showed over here, and the lever comes up here. It has a repeater going into this line, which turns on this torch when this turns off, and that pushes it out, and it just has the right delay to do that. That's the genius, if I do say so myself, saying that quite a few times today, of the extension. Now for the retraction, slightly trickier. For the bottom, it was just turn this off as soon as possible. But the way this works is that we get this to turn on after this is fired. But when we want it to retract, we want this to retract after this one. So that means I had to use a pulse extender. And I fit that in by doing comparator locks. If you don't know, comparators can be turned off with a repeater going into the side. Unlike repeater locks, which is just locking it in its own fixed position, this can actually give a pulse by turning it off. That's exactly what I use. So this repeater is on very slight delay, it's just 2 ticks afterwards, and you can see it just turns off slightly later and pulls this back just at the right time. That's how that works. Now to fire the double piston extender, I need 2 pulses, as I will now show you. So when it's retracted, it looks like this. Then if I send one pulse, it does that, and another pulse, it will do that. But fitting 2 monostables into the space I had left was not easy. So what I first did was just put a simple block on top of a piston monostable, turning off this comparator on subtract mode, and that gives a monostable that we need. Unfortunately, this relies off torches being off, and that means the signal in has to be on. So you either have to do something where you turn off a comparator, or pull the block out with the piston, which is way too big for my needs. So I did the turning off option. But then I needed another pulse, and I was running out of space, so I tried loads of monostable things, but they didn't have enough delay, until I found this way of doing it. I thought I wouldn't be able to put a hopper and dropper here because of this torch, but I found a way. With this piston, it would pull down the sand, which means there's no block here for this to transmit power, because this torch, remember, fires it and locks the hopper, so the item is constantly in there. That gives a constant pulse, which is not what we want. But then, when we turn it off, this torch will go off, and then the monostable will fire, but just in time for this piston to be up and the sand to be in place to let the signal through. There you can see that in action. So it's on and off, and that's how that works, and it works really nicely. If you're wondering why I don't just have, say, a block with a redstone dust on it, that's because it would interfere with these pistons here. Okay, I feel stupid. I take everything I just said back. This hopper and dropper wasn't necessary. I don't know why, but I completely neglected to test a slab, and that does work. So it's just a slab. This piston pulls the sand down, pushes it up, but then this turns off, and that causes a monostable, which gives me enough space to use delay. Oh man, now I feel stupid. But that's a lot better for the tutorial actually, so yeah, speaking of which, let's jump right into that. Okay, so you're going to need the items shown in my inventory in the quantities shown. So you're going to need 5 sticky pistons, 23 building blocks, 4 redstone torches, 7 redstone repeaters, 2 redstone comparators, 6 redstone dust, 1 block of sand, and 1 half slab. Let's get into building this. So start by building out to your area, and you're going to want to dig it down. This will be your floor level. You're going to want to down 1, 2, 3 blocks. And that will be the bottom of your trench, so you'll have a 2 high gap underneath your floor. Now you're going to place 2 pistons facing upwards like so, and then we're going to start with our torch layout once you've placed that piston like that. That's what it should look like. Now I'm just going to mention this tutorial is only going to show building 1 layer, then I'll show you how to expand it afterwards, so don't worry, I'll show you that. So start by placing a block against the bottom piston closest to this top piston. Place a torch on it. Come down diagonally and place a repeater facing into the torch with a dust on the side. And come up here, place a block diagonally below this piston, dust on top, and a torch here. And that is your layout done. So if I just grab a lever. Oh yeah, you're also going to need a lever for input. You can see the extension is already working, which is great. Now we're going to get on with the closing circuit, which I'm going to do right now. So start by building out 2 blocks, well, 3 blocks underneath your piston, like so. Place a dust, block on top, and this will be your input block. So for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just going to mark that with a different coloured wool. Lime will do. That's going to be your input block. Now, come down here, place a block diagonally, and a repeater coming out of this lime block. Okay, then come up from this repeater, place a block on its front, and blocks around like this, with 1, 2 dust, and 1 of your comparators. Right click it, set it to subtract mode. This is very important. Now you're going to come down here, dust with comparator, I meant block, not dust, block with a comparator, and block on its face, dust here. This should be your closing. So let me just show you, reset it. Your closing is working nicely. Now this is where the pulse extender comes in. You see, this is what happens. We don't want that. So what you're going to do is place a block on top of that repeater. Shift click if you want to do that, by the way. Then you won't change the delay of the repeater. Then place a torch on the side of that block and a 1 tick repeater coming out of that torch on top of this block. Now if we look at it, extension still works. Now the retraction works, and we just have to fire the double extender, which is where the fun part kicks in. So just come down here, place a piston on the side of that block with a redstone dust, with a block on top and a sand block on top of that. Then a dust next to the repeater, comparator, should be pointing into it. That should also be on subtract mode, by the way. Sorry, forgot to mention that. And a 3 tick repeater coming out of that repeater there. Then on top, you want to place your slab on the side of your input block. Has to be on the top half of the block, so you can place redstone on it. Then a 1 tick repeater. Come around here. Place 2 3 tick repeaters coming out of that sand block. Then a piston facing downwards on the face of that repeater with a block on the side. Now to get power into this line from that piston, I'm just going to place a block here with a torch on it, and that should be your whole circuit done. Wasn't that easy? Let's just check how this works. There's the extension, and there's the retraction. If you want to cover this up, floor blocks, and then say you wanted to do chests, grab a chest if I can find them. There we go. Chest here, a non-solid block, and that should be you good. So there, it should cover up nicely, and you can have some fancy hidden storage in a small space. Now once again, just going to say this does not work in Bucket, unfortunately. Hopefully they'll fix that one day, but for now it doesn't. So anyway, my name's been Mr. Mruberduck. I really do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.